This week, Emmett and I discuss 5 more issues of Jack Kirby's foundational run on Kamandi, the Last Boy on Earth. Kirby's exorcism story in issue 24 is somewhat disappointing, but the subsequent 4 issues deliver some more interesting Kirby concepts, including some hints of what's been going on in Europe since the Great Disaster. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support. This is Tim.
And this is Emmett.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Emmett in Australia. It's where are you? I keep why
Country Victoria. Country Victoria.
I don't know why it just fell out of my brain somehow. Yes, Country Victoria. Not further than just failing to understand what it is. I couldn't even think of the words for some reason.
Yeah.
But
that's okay. That's okay.
Well, maybe it's all the technical difficulties we've been experiencing here the last 20 minutes trying to get this call started.
Folks, it's been a living nightmare. Oy. We're here now.
Emma connected to me on a Skype meeting while Skype was closed, and
I don't even know how I did that.
Suddenly I had a button to click that said join the meeting. Okay.
And I had no display in front of me. It was like nothing actually working. So it's very alarming. Yes, moving swiftly on.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like maybe Jack Kirby would write a story about that. That was, well, of course, if it's horror or magic, I don't know. Perhaps it wouldn't be. It's not maybe his wheelhouse, but we'll get into that here in a second. We're rejoining Kamandi, already in progress. This is part 4 of our discussion, covering issues 24 to 28.
Yes.
And you mentioned last time that you had read ahead a little bit, and you were not impressed with issue 24.
I was not impressed with issue 24, and I feel I should address this now. Thank you for bringing it up, Tim. Because at the time of recording, that discussion's just gone live. And I listened back to it, and I heard my complaints, and I stand by those complaints. But I went into this reading session going, "Oh God, is this the decline of Kamandi? Is this when everything goes wrong?" And I'm happy to report, folks, no, it isn't. It gets very good very quickly. We just need to get through this slog first,
yeah,
and then we're right back on top again.
So Kamandi does not jump the
24.
Kamandi does not jump the shark, but some sharks jump Kamandi in subsequent issues.
Oh, well done. Yes.
Right, but yeah, issue 24 is kind of a one-shot attempt at horror, maybe, kinda.
It culminates in the exorcism, and that whole stuff was big at the time. So, yeah, I can see. For anyone listening, I do appreciate that. I feel I should apologize that this is a comics podcast, and yet I insist repeatedly on bringing movies into the conversation.
That's a long-standing tradition on this podcast, going way back to the beginning with me and Mulele and Brandon. They'd keep bringing up movies, and I would keep not knowing what they were talking about. It was a running joke.
It's worth commenting on the fact that at the time of publication, around this period, you have this rash of exorcism films coming out.
Sure.
Culminating with The Exorcist. The Exorcist is the most famous one. But there's a number of other ones as well. And demon possession is this big talking point. And then that neatly tees up the satanic panic in the 1980s, where all of a sudden people thought that there was this wave of Satanists infiltrating small towns across America and so forth. And
backmasking on rock records and all that.
Yeah, Judas Priest apparently were trying to kill their audience, as Bill Hicks once had a famous routine about. Now, the thing is, A less commented upon aspect of the Satanic Panic and the rash of exorcism movies was that it did wonderful business for the Catholic Church. Wonderful, wonderful things. Really raised their profile. Actually made the Catholic Church seem like they were doing something. So, it was good for them. And what's interesting about the current time that we're in now, that's coming back. Exorcism's back. Apparently it's a really popular source of study in the Vatican currently. At a time when we really should be, holding the Catholic Church to account for a number of things. Not least of which being child abuse, given the concerns around the Satanic Panic. But we also, at this moment in time, have a movie, which I have watched the beginning of, Tim, and I stopped because I need to watch this with my wife. A Russell Crowe vehicle called The Pope's Exorcist. And let me tell you, this movie is a spectacular work of art. Like, it's total garbage, but it's a spectacular work of art because... you have a sequence where a Russell Crowe is writing as this Father Amath, who's a real person, although what he did was possibly not that real, and in fact definitely wasn't that real. He was an exorcist, and Russell Crowe's playing this character driving a Vespa through the streets of Rome to the tune of Faith No More's "We Care a Lot." Now, I don't think I can convey to you just how ridiculous that is. That's just one scene of this movie. The whole movie is like this. Just ridiculous song choices and really stupid scenes. And it's an exorcism movie. And I do believe the Vatican probably were like, yeah, put this out there because it did wonder for us last time. And they're not wrong. So anyway, I provide all this as background to the silly shenanigans in this particular episode. I do wonder if some money men gave Kirby a shoulder tap and said, hey, throw in an exorcism story. But that being said, there is stuff in here where I still see it in keeping with some of Kirby's themes. It's just the as you talked about, the occult is not a source of particular interest to Mr. Kirby, I believe.
Yeah. So, issue 24, dated December. What year would this be? 74, I think? I didn't check. Cover, we see Kamandi and some other creatures outside of this house, and there's a voice coming from the door. Welcome, come in and die. Ha 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 ha. Which sounds like really, to me, and I'm not much of a horror consumer, but even to me, that sounds kind of trite.
Yeah, it's a bit, the aspect of the door is interesting as well. I do find it familiar from having recently read Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk, which also had a green door that the Hulk was constantly crisscrossing through into a sort of hell dimension. So I wonder if there's a source of inspiration here. But yes, these characters, these sort of threatening characters we see around Kamandi, we will soon meet them, and they're not as threatening as they may first appear.
No. So when we left Kamandi, he was floating on some driftwood after their craft had been destroyed. And
yeah, it's real. My name is Ishmael moment right now. Like, he's had his Moby Dick adventure, and now we're into another story.
And apparently he fell asleep holding to this driftwood. I don't think there's no sign of him being violently knocked out here. So the drinks stay on the table.
I think I'm safe this week. I think I'm safe.
Well, there was one case where drinking was required. That's, I think, coming up later in this issue.
Damn it.
But he drifts ashore on this island, and there's this huge mansion that we see in the spread on pages 2 and 3 with seems to be some kind of magic floating around it. Oh, and some Kirby crackle. Yeah,
so I was watching a video on the Kirby Museum YouTube channel about this particular issue, and they got into a big debate about whether to refer to this as Kirby Crackle or Kirby Dots.
Are they not the same thing?
Apparently they are the same thing, but one is more popular than the other, and they were stumping for, I hope I haven't got this wrong, I believe there was something for Kirby dots as being the original term, and that Kirby Crackle had somehow become.
Well, it's alliterative, so
yeah, that's I appreciate the appeal of it, saying it out loud. But yeah, they were really saying no, it should be Kirby dots.
Yeah, I guess I think I have heard Kirby dots used before too. Anyway, so he sees these lights and Kirby dots and whatever coming from the house, and then he is attacked by someone, or a group of someone's, who turn out to be. So this guy Flim Flam, he's some kind of a monkey, not the same kind of gorilla or ape that we saw previously. I haven't identified exactly what kind of monkey this is. Is this a macaque?
He's like those Japanese monkeys who hang out in the saunas all the time in the volcanic
macaque,
waters.
I think they're called.
There you go. Yeah, I would have thought you'd recognize him straight away.
But he's so big. He's bigger than those monkeys. So, and also he talks.
So let's not leave that aside. Yes.
And he's with 3 humans who don't speak, and he's convinced that since Kamandi can speak, he must be possessed by the curse. He says animals don't talk unless the curse gets into them. And, of course, Kamandi pushes back against that, but then some rocks start flying around, and then Kamandi starts flying around, whacked against the humans and against walls and stuff, and is knocked out. So here's your drink.
All right,
occasion.
Tim, vamp for a couple of seconds, would you? I'll be right back.
He goes off to get a beverage. Okay. Well, we can pause here and come back.
All right, I have returned, and by the strictures of the deal that I made, yes, that does count.
Yes,
So
he has to be like somehow violently knocked out, and definitely that happens here, although in a little bit different method than before, because it employs some magic. So what do you got there?
Sláinte, I'm drinking Banks Brewing Night Moves Stout. So
okay.
it's a Victorian brewer, I believe, and Australian anyway. And they do some very nice things. It's the first one of these I've had. So Sláinte, yes.
Okay. Cheers. So Kamandi is still kind of unconscious, and Flim Flam is taking care of him. And he wakes up, and he can still talk, of course, but Flim Flam says, "Strange, you don't sound like the curse now." I don't know how he sounds different from before, because he
didn't sound like the curse before, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless Flim Flam was being manipulated in some way, but yeah.
So Kamandi's looking around this house. He says this old building is a pre-disaster relic. The books on these shelves crumble to the touch, and yet they could hold the secret to ... to this curse. But then there's...
He's making some logical leaps there.
There's screaming, and one of the humans is going through some changes. All these horns are coming out of his head and kind of turning into some kind of monster. Someone is saying, "You're mine to do with as I please." Ha 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 ha. And there are flames surrounding Kamandi. Now, I got a little confused by the storytelling here. So what happens is that one of the humans is possessed. But the problem for me was that this young boy human had never really been featured in a panel. He was always kind of a background figure until he was possessed. And so I saw this possessed guy, and I didn't understand who he was.
Got it.
There were comments like, "You've taken over the boy," but I was like, "What boy?" I didn't see any boy, and I had to, flip back. I think the second time I read it, I figured it out and went, "Oh yeah, there he is," but he's just kind of running around the back of the panel.
For fans of this podcast, I would suggest that popular meme of little girl looking directly into the camera as a house burns behind her. It's kind of what he was doing previously, where he was sort of hovering in the background of panels and he just looked slightly sinister. But yeah, he didn't speak. None of them were meant to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're introduced to him and he's speaking and he's got a villainous cast to his face. And the unfortunate thing, one of the frustrations I have with this issue is that it's so reminiscent of the previous evil, twisted, psychic, little people that Kirby has featured already. Like once already in Kamandi, because we had the chap in the flying satellite city, and we've also seen this in New Gods as well. And it's a recurring idea of villainy that keeps using this boyish character who's possessed of psychic abilities and is completely evil, and I don't know why he's going to that particular well. It's an odd, repeated trope.
Yeah. So this possessed guy, the curse, is dropping stuff on Flim Flam. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be part of the ceiling or what, but some wood fell on him. And then he was kind of knocked out, but he's not Kamandi, so you don't need to drink. But then one of the other humans, who looks kind of like One Punch Man from the manga, his name is Juki, and he takes a hold of the boy, and the possession goes away. And Kamandi's convinced that the curse has an Achilles heel. And it's Juki. Somehow Juki can chase him off.
Right. And again, it's kind of like, I know I keep going back to this well myself, but it's kind of like what we saw with the explanation for the anti-life equation in New Gods, where you had the human character, was it Sunny? Sunny Sumo, was that who it was? Who was capable of non-thought. That was the thing that's how it was demonstrated by him. He was able to achieve this sort of Zen-like state and experience no thought at all, and that was an aspect of anti-life. That wasn't in itself necessarily evil or anything like that, but it was something he was capable of. And I feel like that's similar here. This character has a sort of monkish appearance, and I wonder if that's the idea that the chaos of thought has been sort of masked by him.
Well, at the end of the issue,
I'm doing a lot of legwork here for what I don't actually see on the page. There's not much of an explanation.
At the end of the issue, Flim Flam says that Juki is gentle but confused. And Kamandi says he's the perfect jammer of an invading will, a shield against the curse. Yeah, because his mind is kind of confused.
I don't follow that, but yeah, that's what we're told.
So I guess if you got stuff straight in your mind, then you're vulnerable. Okay. It would seem like being confused would be a weakness against the curse rather than a strength, but
make you more pliable.
Yeah. Anyway, so they go digging around in this house and find that it used to house some kind of government program called Project 412.
Well, here's the thing. It's not a house. It's a college. It seems to be a university building because we've got the administrator's office.
Well, yeah, it's such a large building that, it wouldn't have been a one family home.
We had the previous page had the administrator's office, and he's walked into a filing area with files and data, is what we see in the sign. So I think the implication is that it's actually a science college.
Yeah, just from the outside, it looks like a very large home rather than like a university building, but whatever.
It's got that sort of gothic aspect to it. But I think if you wanted to give a generous reading of this issue, given how we railed against its incompatibility with occult themes, it's that Arthur C. Clarke line, about any science that is so far advanced it'll be confused for magic. I think that's what's happening here. Whatever these procedures were that they were doing in this building, we now see them as black magic, exorcism, spiritualism, whatever. But these were experiments in psychism. So there was some sort of scientific basis for it, but the science itself has been lost. And specifically the fact that Kamandi had a book in his hands, and he said, this could explain everything, but then it collapses into dust. Again, I think it's that idea of there is a logic for all this, but it's been lost. It's, you know, and then we get this weird, mutant Catman.
Right, yeah, the curse appears, and I think Kamandi says that this creature is the progeny of the original subject of the experiment, and it's a very large house cat who's been something weird on his head. I'm not sure what all that is supposed to be, but
he's got like throbbing veins for his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was an experimental cat. They experimented on a cat, and this is that creature's descendant, who now has these psychic powers.
Right.
I can't believe that's a sentence.
And the large black, I wouldn't call him African American because I don't think he's American in the story, but he throws the cat out the window, and the cat disappears into the waves below. And that's when Flim Flam mentions that Juki is gentle but very confused. And so the story just kind of ends there. It didn't feel like a very strong ending to me.
No, it's not. It's not particularly good. And I read this after that great run of issues, and I was so excited to keep going. And I read it, and it literally like forced me to a stop. I was like, oh. No, I'm done. And then you're like, let's do some more. Okay. But as I said, things improved.
Right. Well, we look at the cover of issue 25, and we've got flying sharks. They look almost like jet fighters. Not coincidentally, yes. I'm sure. And we see Kamandi and Flim Flam on some kind of sea craft that some of the sharks are biting into. And he says, flying man-eaters, we're done for. On the first page, Kamandi, Flim Flam, and the three humans are on the wreckage of a boat. Kamandi says, this wreck will take us nowhere, Flim Flam. He says, it was once a proud ship, a showboat. And then everybody sees something coming, and the big splash spread is of Kamandi and Flim Flam and a couple of the humans looking at something, which turns out to be the mutants returning. Ben Boxer and Steve and Renzi. They're coming up out of the water.
Don't you feel that should have been the splash page? The splash page should have been Kamandi reuniting with them, not like them looking.
that would have been a little stronger, having the reveal be the big panel rather than the looking at the reveal.
I mean, it's quite a striking splash page because literally we as readers are looking at them looking at us. So that's quite striking. But yeah. It doesn't make immediate sense to me.
Yeah, and the mutants are in their metal forms, so Flim Flam and his people are really confused by that and kind of scared. But of course, Kamandi knows who these guys are, and there's no danger, he says. And the mutants change back to their more human-looking forms, and then Flim Flam explains that these three humans are like, quote-unquote trained animals who can do tricks, and so they start doing tricks, and their names are Juki, Lukey, and Dookie. But they're not Donald Duck's nephews.
That's terrible.
So, I thought that was another kind of Kirby take on relationships between humans and animals.
Well, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because we've talked over and over again about how angry Kamandi gets when he sees humans being reduced to the state of animals, kept as pets or slaves or used for entertainment. And that's literally what these three are being used for. They're being used to entertain. He's a traveling freak show ringmaster, if you like. And Kamandi admiringly says, "You taught them well, Flim Flam." And I would have thought this would be the moment he'd kick off. But he doesn't. He seems genuinely impressed.
Yeah, well, in fact, when Flim Flam says that he thinks he should have Kamandi and the mutants in his show, you would really expect Kamandi to hit the ceiling, but he just kind of mildly turns him down.
Yeah. And for once, Kamandi's got support because, like, the other three are like, "Oh, why? Only a fool would exhibit us,"
Yeah, although, Ben says that because then he's saying, you haven't looked too closely at the tidal pools in any of these islands, and there are these very weird creatures coming up onto the shore. I can't even explain what this thing is. But
they're incredible monsters. Yeah.
They're all running away from it. It looks vaguely crab-like, but not really a crab. Not as much of a crab as the one we saw in a previous issue. So
yeah, it looks they look like Lovecraftian beasties from like Gordon. The Gordon Lewis, I think his name was. I'm not sure, but a film director from the 80s. But like they're all like From Beyond, movies like that, where they're schlocky and goopy and ooey. That's what they look like.
Mm-hmm. So Ben says they better leave that island. So they're looking around for some kind of vehicle they can use to get off the island. And Kamandi finds some kind of a boathouse that he looks around in. And he finds a hovercraft in this shed, but then he's attacked by some kind of large, strong creature that apparently evolved from a fish. Looks vaguely like a fish, but kind of like a lizard.
Yeah, a savage fish that learned to walk on land. Yeah, that's your commentary.
Yeah, well, Ben says the barracuda became this. Okay. And then the hovercraft that they found is surrounded by this huge orange snake, but somehow they managed to get the craft away from there and out onto the water. And everybody gets aboard, and then the ship conks out. Ben says it's old, neglected, with a tiny residue of fuel. So they're just floating around out there, and they're attacked by maybe the same snake. It's kind of hard to tell, but some kind of creature. And it looks as if the thing's being smashed to bits, but, well, let's see. Now, this thing is not turning the page for me. That's the problem. All right.
You've got your flying sharks.
Now Comixology is not working right.
Oh my goodness! So many technical issues tonight, folks. It's okay because we're just coming to the end of the issue, so I'll just take us through quickly. So yeah, there's lots of exposition where they're being attacked by these flying sharks that just keep dive bombing them and then attacking the raft itself. And we sort of end the issue where we began the issue, where they're all like on board like a sinking wrecked vessel. And finally, there's this attempt of getting away, and they manage to escape with that small residue of fuel, allows them to almost skip across the sea surface. And
I'm not sure what they're using for fuel here, but somehow they get away from those flying sharks.
He's just been working magic with that engine because he said it was just a little bit of fuel left. So like he managed to use it all to get them to a new shore where apparently the flying sharks will not pursue them. They're flying sharks.
Yeah, so the hovercraft. So it is a hovercraft. It flies. It's not always a seagoing thing, but they fly it through this cloud, and for some reason the sharks won't go through the cloud. Not really explained, but that's just what it is, and that's the end. So it's another kind of weird ending.
Yeah, like the previous issue, it's just as like, look, I'm trying to get us somewhere, so let's just shush. Let's just get to this place. There's a bit of that.
Coming up, a giant eagle, a leopard-made environmental disaster, and Europe enters the picture. But first, a reminder to join us for 20th Century TV and music trivia quiz videos and more on our Patreon page. Every month, patrons donating $4 a month or more also get a full-length podcast episode reviewing an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man from the 1960s. Check out all our rewards at patreon.com/deconcomics. If you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support. At To the Batpoles podcast, we look at the many sides of our favorite hero, Batman. For example, Encyclopedia Batman.
It's the basic formula for escaping from the Siamese human knot. I just recalled it.
Civic Responsibility Batman.
Only a criminal would disguise himself as a licensed bonded guard, yet callously park in front of a fire hydrant.
Impish Humor Batman.
Look at him, Robin. That crooked bird's going crazy.
And more. See if you can identify other sides of the Cape Crusader, and then join us at To the Batpoles podcast, available wherever podcasts are found or at tothebatpoles.libsyn.com. Batman has many sides, but can we trust him to save the day?
You can be sure, if it's Batman.
Issue 26, the cover shows Kamandi in some tall grass, and a big kind of like grass cutting or harvesting machine is coming towards him with 3 leopards riding in it, like leopards that we've seen before, and they've got guns, and one says, "That animal is dangerous. I'll finish him off," pointing his gun at Kamandi. Picking up with the story, Kamandi and Ben are seen on the shore of this other place where they've landed, and the splash on 2 and 3 is this huge cliff, or
barrier wall almost.
Calls it an escarpment, a mammoth escarpment.
Because we're now finally approaching that region of North America that I've been fascinated with since I first saw the map in Kamandi, which is Canada, otherwise known as the Land of Devils.
Yeah.
So what happened to Canada? Well, we find out, folks. We find out.
Where's the poutine?
Yes, where's the poutine? It was the poutine. It was the poutine that did it.
Nobody's wearing a toque or anything. So, yeah, they're all on the shore. They've got a fire going. And Ben says they're beyond the radiation barrier. And then, for some reason that's not really explained, Flim Flam and his humans decide to move on somewhere else. So they're saying goodbye. I didn't really see a compelling reason why. I thought they'd want to stay together, but okay, we're just going. Well, where are you going? I don't know. Somewhere.
Well, Kamandi and the fellas didn't want to perform for Flim Flam, and he's a businessman. He's got to keep going. He's got to get to the next gig. But yeah, it's quite funny. It's just like, yeah, you're boring. We're moving on. Maybe we'll see them again. I don't know, but
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
It felt underdeveloped. The last 2 issues just felt like almost cast-off issues.
Kamandi and the mutants capture this huge eagle, and Ben and Kamandi ride the eagle up to the top of the cliff.
Sorry, I'll just stop you there, Tim, for a moment. I think we've misread this, both of us.
Okay.
He's saying goodbye to them because he's saying goodbye because he's going into, the Land of Devils, and he's assuming he might die. I think Steve and Renzi are going to stay with Flim Flam and keep an eye on them.
Yeah, well, we don't see them after this for the rest of the issues we're covering this time. It's just Kamandi and Ben. Okay.
I think that's what's happening, yeah.
Yeah, that may be. Yeah, I guess it's Ben and Kamandi who are saying goodbye. Is this just like in the name of exploration, I guess? Or they didn't catch that they were looking for anything in particular?
They're just going to explore the region. Yeah.
Anyway, so they ride this eagle up to the top of the cliff, and as Kirby tells us, like every issue after this, the great disaster created a hothouse effect, and it's kind of like a jungle up there.
And it's stunning, actually stunning. This whole sequence, the detail and the use of color and the scope of it as well. Like we've got this giant eagle that they're riding atop, and then we see it fly through this forest, and the trees dwarf this giant eagle. Like it's just this massive space. So I feel like he's really, he talks about this idea of the hothouse, the tortured ecology, blah blah. But actually seeing it's quite spectacular. It's not just words on a page. He's thought about this, and this is how he's rendered it. There's a giant caterpillar at one point. Do you see that? There's a huge
I see
caterpillar.
it there. Yeah, just in front of the eagle's face. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the size of the trees, the giant eagle looks like a regular-sized parrot.
It's amazing. Like, it's just in terms of the conceptualization of this, it's incredible.
And we see more creatures on the next page. It looks like a huge stag beetle and some other things that look vaguely lizardish or related to dinosaurs, maybe. Who knows?
A concept he comes back to later in these issues is he gets very excited about the idea of insects evolving to become mammalian. Like they start mimicking the behavior of certain mammal species because they've achieved that size.
Yeah,
that seems to be his theory. That like if you got like the click-clack creatures start behaving like herds of horses, they start stampeding.
Yeah.
Because he's saying that's because they're of that size. They now occupy that status. And what's interesting about this, I was recently in New Zealand, and we went to conservatory, an animal conservation zoo, enclosure, whatever you want to call it. And they were talking about how the birds, they had no natural predators on the ground. So some of the species of bird actually evolved to be ground-dwelling birds. And then when the Australians introduced more ground mammals into the environment, all these birds got wiped out pretty quickly because they'd never encountered anything like it. But I was fascinated with this idea that the birds that evolved in New Zealand, because there wasn't anything like any species of rat or dwelling in the forest areas, or species of possum. It was the possums that really made an impact on them when they came from Australia. They just evolved to fill that niche. They just decided they were like, let's just hang out in the ground. So these birds just hang out on the ground.
Like kiwis, maybe some penguins.
Yeah, kiwis still exist, but there was all these other ones that no longer exist anymore. Got wiped out pretty quickly after colonialization really kicked in. So I wonder if Kirby was conscious of that. Like, he's got this sort of understanding of evolutionary theory at work here, and he decides to work it out through the depiction of insects becoming so large that they start to mimic the behavior of mammals. It's really, interesting. I just love the fact that he just went for it.
Yeah. So the eagle kind of crash lands on a lonely crag and dies. And Ben realizes the eagle was wounded and dying all this time and was trying to get home before it died. So they're standing on top of this crag where the eagle landed, looking out at all these huge insects and plants around them. Yeah, it's quite
Dominion
a spectacular,
of the Devils.
Spectacular big panel here at the beginning of chapter 3. Yeah, Dominion of the Devils. And then somebody starts shooting at them, and Ben changes to his metallic form and pitches a log at this helicopter that's the shooting is coming from, and knocks it out of the sky. And it turns out to be a helicopter owned by the Sackers Company, who we saw quite a while back in Florida. They're here in the Dominion of Devils to claim
exploit his resources.
Yeah.
Rampant capitalism.
And this is where the leopards come in. It's leopards running the helicopter, and they get into a fight with Ben and Kamandi. But then, stampeding insects come along and chase them away. So Ben and Kamandi avoid being captured or killed or whatever by these leopards. Some of the insects, are like click-clack, grasshoppers, which he says these are more like horses. Ben says, I wouldn't know what to call them, and Kamandi says, click-clack is a good name. It's the sound they make, and he's wiping a tear away.
He shows more emotion for click-clack than he did for the 3 love interests he's had killed. Okay, sorry. One of them didn't die.
Yeah,
he just left.
The second, Flower's sister didn't die.
Spirit.
She's Spirit, yeah.
He left her behind.
Yeah, but, the dolphin was killed within one issue of being introduced.
Yeah.
So then we see the big grass-cutting machine that was on the cover.
I do love that it's got its own banner ad. If Mother Nature isn't nice, use Sacker's defoliants. And it's like being sprayed all over this grassland, destroying it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of incredible.
Did this seem weird to you on page 19 that in 2 successive panels, Kamandi says they've got to be stopped? Is he actually repeating that? It felt almost like a mistake.
Yeah, it looks like a mistake. I think so.
Like somehow the same dialogue got put in both panels. Although in the second one, it's all in bold.
He's saying it with more emphasis. I can accept that, but I do wonder if there's an error there.
So he wants to stop them from destroying everything, but he's not sure what to do. And then they're approached by something. You see just a big brown leg in the foreground, and on the next page, we see it's a large ant standing on 2 legs. Oh, it's an ant, but shouldn't it have 6 legs if it's an ant? It only has arms and legs like a human.
Yeah, I don't know. But let's not delay any further. Let us introduce the greatest character we've met so far in Kamandi.
Yeah, it's a bulldog in a military uniform speaking with a British accent.
A racist bulldog.
And we find out in the next issue that his name is Captain Pypar, Pypar.
Incredible. Yes. even the far off, apocalyptic future, the British Empire will never die. It'll be as oppressive and racist and warmongering as it ever was. But yeah, I love that he personifies, because we later learn more about what's going on here, and the different peoples are represented by different animals. But I love that British Bulldog is, of course, Britain. But yeah, he keeps referring to this ant as an aborigine, which not great. But later on, Kamandi refers to the same creature as Gunga Din, and I did appreciate that. And there's a bunch of nods to Rudyard Kipling coming up as well, including a direct quote. So yes, everything about this I loved, just absolutely loved. Fantastic stuff.
And the next issue box says, "Sit down and wait for the Mad Marine," which is Captain Pypar, I take it.
Absolutely. He's bonkers. He's bloody nuts.
So issue 27, Mother Nature had flipped. She produced a beastly replay of Gunga Din. And Kamandi is holding a gun, but he's surrounded by leopards holding guns on him and also shooting flame at him, it looks like. And he says, the leopards are closing in. I'm trapped.
He really needs to come up with better cover taglines that actually relate to what we're seeing on the cover. Genuinely.
So we pick up with Piper and the Aborigine and Ben and Kamandi, and Piper has assumed command. He's like folded Ben and Kamandi into his military. They're serving him now. They never actually volunteered as far as we could see, but they're just now
part of the thing. And on the splash page, in the lower corner, we get a bit of a map here showing where the Dominion of the Devils is. And he uses the term look-see, a look-see at where we are, and Piper uses that expression quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have to wonder what wartime experience Kirby had with English soldiers, and maybe overhearing a commanding officer ordering somebody to go take a look-see at enemy movements or whatever, and then get horribly killed. I don't know. But yeah, we stray into Monty Python-esque episodes with this character, and that's why I love him so much. He's such a, blinkered, self-absorbed, deluded mockery of like the English man-at-arms, and obviously I love him.
So, but yeah, he's got Ben and Kamandi carrying stuff. Ben's got a lot of stuff strapped to his back. Then he has the ant listening against a wall, probing it with his feelers, and Piper says there's plenty of fight on the other side. So actually it's ammunition that's there, and Piper shoots his gun at it, and it starts exploding. And then as they're marching away, the explosions are like catching up with them. And Kamandi says, "May we march a little faster?"
I've noticed it recently. There's been a couple of recent panels with Kamandi in close-up where he looks shit scared. Like one was when he's on the giant bird. Like, he was depicting the way he was, like, shrieking. Like, there was, like, genuine terror. The other time is here, and I think in both instances, it's played for comedic effect.
Yes.
So, yeah. I quite enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's certainly comedic here, because Piper's insisting that they have to march, and he's the leader. They can't pass him up, but these explosions are getting closer and closer. And Kamandi's saying, "Let's run for it," and Piper says, "No breaking of ranks back there." But then he says, "All right, now quick step." So he's realizing that they do need to move faster, and they finally the explosions have stopped, and they've been in this tunnel, and they go up to the surface, and this huge anthill has fallen over as a result of the explosions. Big as a skyscraper, Kamandi says. And it fell on top of some buildings that Sacker's company had set up. And it looks like something's caught fire there. And it's this whole armed enclave of Sackers. It's not just setting up industrial stuff. They've got weapons. Or Ben says, fights. So they try to... they knock aside some of these leopards and investigate more and find some artillery in the back. But then a bunch of leopards find them and start shooting at them. Shoot at Ben even. He's not really injured by that or anything, but they are kind of outnumbered here, and they have to stop fighting. They're being held at gunpoint and corrosive acid spray point.
Yeah, they figure out how to isolate Ben with corrosive acid, yeah.
And the leopards are going to shoot them all, and then suddenly the ground falls out from under them, and it turns out that the ant has been digging away underneath them, and they fell through the ground. There wasn't enough to support them anymore. We didn't mention Piper keeps calling them beasties.
Yeah, which is kind of amazing. Yeah.
And, Kamandi is starting to get annoyed here. He doesn't want to do this, but he doesn't want to help Piper anymore, but he's being compelled to. And, this was interesting. The ant touches his feelers to Kamandi's head, and Kamandi can see all of these other bulldog troops that Piper says are coming. They're all on horseback with flags and bugles and all that kind of stuff. And Kamandi at first thinks that the troops are there and he's going to get crushed by the horses, but so I guess whatever the ant is putting into his mind seems really real to him.
Yeah, I did like, don't you get it, Kamandi? The ant has developed a method of receiving and transmitting mental images. And Piper's like, that's how the bugger talks. Yeah, for the purpose of this exercise, I like to imagine that Piper sounds like Ray Winston. Who's the daddy? But yeah, I think let's move on.
And Piper has Ben break through a wall, and they get out of the armed enclave back into the forest, but the Sackers guys are out there too, and they're spraying the whole place, and it's killing the giant insects. And of course, they're cutting away at the grass and spraying that.
Yeah, I did have a thought about the sequence in the previous section where the giant ant will collapse on top of the buildings. Like, Piper knew to find explosives in that structure and blew it up, and that's what caused it to collapse. And my thought was that the giant ant, who he's, dragged into his service, the Gunga Din character, might be the last surviving member of that species or that hive, and that they were actually storing their ammunition in that towering anthill, having killed all the creatures inside it.
Yeah, that story isn't explained, but yeah, that's a good take on that. I think that's why there aren't any ants coming out of this giant anthill.
Yeah, I think they're all been killed, and this creature has passed on to Piper that this is where all the stuff is. This is where they were killing all my people. They put all their ammunition here. The explosives are all here. And that's what they then do. They blow it up and create a distraction, et cetera, et cetera. But I kind of feel like there's ideas here that just get tossed in and then not really developed. And that's just an example of, there's a backstory there we don't see. But there's almost a poignancy to their relationship as well, that the ant is the last surviving member of his community, and he's met this bloody bulldog who's going to take him on a roaring rampage of revenge.
We do get a lot of commentary about what the Sackers people are doing. These Sackers Company leopards are more dangerous than any of the native life forms. Instead of claws, they use man's old technology. Nothing will be spared. When they're done with the animals and plants, they'll strip the land. Their greed is endless and their methods are brutal. They're even using dynamite on the insects. What nature has created here will be snuffed out. So that's a conversation between Ben and Kamandi. They're both really hitting this aspect hard here. And we see the Sackers leopards loading up dead insects on a truck.
Yeah.
Dead giant insects. Yeah, it's not like little tiny grasshoppers. And we see a factory that's belching smoke. And Kamandi says it's a slow lingering death, but Piper says, balderdash, they're going out of business. They violated the Atlantic Testament. Here come our lads now. And we see those troops on horses coming. As an ending, this still kind of felt like it just happened to end here. It wasn't like a big dramatic ending. It's not even a very big last panel.
No, it's leading into the next issue, which is where the real guts and glory is. But yeah, I know what you mean. The things sort of just conclude. But at least with this one, we're promised this is actually going somewhere. Whereas the other two, it felt like, well, we're done.
Coming, Bulldog Britanex, Gorilla Germanex, and Snapping Napoleonex enforce the Atlantic Testament.
The Garibaldex don't get mentioned there, I notice. We'll find out all about them next issue too. I've been complaining about these covers where I've been saying, oh, the the actual byline doesn't relate to the image as such. The concept isn't actually being explored on the cover, and then frequently the cover spoils the storyline. That's still the case in the cover for issue 28. It spoils the story, but at least the concept is consistent with the byline, because this entire issue turns into Jack Kirby's riff on the Charge of the Light Brigade. And that's what we see on the cover. And the byline is, "Into the Valley of Death rode the 600. Bulldogs dying like men," which is, again, Charge of the Light Brigade. So at least this is consistent. It's still a spoiler. I'm not happy about it, but like, it's consistent.
Well, yeah, that blurb does mesh with the cover image. So, yeah, now we're in a tent with Piper and some other military leaders. One's a bulldog, and one's, I think, a wolf or some kind of cat. The other one, I'm not quite sure. Is he a gorilla?
The French are wolves, the Germans are gorillas, and the British are dogs.
Yeah.
I don't think we meet the Italians, but they're referred to as they're named after Garibaldi. I don't think we meet them, but yeah, that's the different nation types represented as animals.
So yeah, of course, Ben and Kamandi are regarded as animals, and these other generals don't see any use for the animals being there. They want them out. And Piper is kind of turning on them too. He says, "Blost, you beasties! Must you follow me everywhere?"
And this is when the penny dropped for me. Like, when we learn about the treaty, what the treaty stands for, that was another moment. But the penny dropped for me here that, oh, he actually is British, because I was laughing at the idea of him being Canadian this entire time. You know, because Canada has its own connection to the British Empire, and I was like, oh, he's like the lone remaining British Canadian.
Yeah, I was puzzled by that too. If he's got a British accent, what's he doing here? But yeah, it's explained in this issue. And yeah, Kamandi is saying to Ben after they leave the tent, "This force isn't native to America. The bulldogs speak like the ancient Englishmen." And they're noticing the gorillas must have cut their teeth on ancient Prussian history. And yeah, the wolves speaking French. So they're all coming in here together. And then Ben is showing Kamandi this map. So now this doesn't quite work for me, because, you know, the Great Lakes have become this one big monster lake. So it implies that maybe the water level came up. But at the same time, there's now a land bridge between North America and Europe. And it's called Land Bridge, by the way. A land bridge. Sorry. Let's not pass over this. A land bridge which has completely flattened Ireland. It's just not there. Well, yeah, I'm confused by this map for a number of reasons. I mean, it seems like Europe has suddenly become much bigger than it was in comparison to North America. It's just enlarged. And the Atlantic Ocean is not much to speak of anymore.
Yeah, it's become almost encircled. Europe now resembles how Europe sees itself in relation to America.
Yeah, and I guess that area that says snow wizards is supposed to be Scandinavia.
Yeah, it's got snow wizards, apparently.
But
don't want to go there.
That land bridge area is like maybe about Greenland, and it looks like the British Isles might be that area there between the land bridge and snow wizards.
Yeah, there's more of Britain left than Ireland. Poor Ireland got completely subsumed.
Anyway, so that's where these European troops are coming from, and they take guardianship of Canada. So it turns out, yeah, their guardianship, they have these articles of guardianship that Kamandi and Ben find, and the group is called the Nations of the Atlantic Testament Orders, which spells NATO initials. So, yeah, so that's kind of what we come to expect here, these kinds of weird connections to our world.
Although I don't know how it would happen that those animals would just kind of soak up the language and customs of the humans who used to be there.
Well, to be fair, we had a cult who worshipped the Watergate tapes. I mean, like, everything's on the table now.
Yeah, maybe
Once
there
they've
were
accepted that.
Similar kinds of artifacts found in Europe that kind of clued them into the former European civilization. And so they just imitated it. Okay.
Yeah, that's the gist.
And Piper comes back, and he's angry at Ben and Kamandi for going through the papers there and looking the stuff up. And he tries to hit Ben in his metallic form and hurts his hand. And now both Ben and Kamandi are done with this, so they leave the encampment and head out into nature. And we're reminded again about the hothouse effect, in case we forgot.
It's still stunning. Like, it's beautiful. I mean, I know. Ben actually says, this is big and beautiful and mysterious, but, like, genuinely is incredible. Like, it's incredible vision.
Yeah. And, yeah, they see some more of the click-clack type insects traveling in herds. Ben says they probably raise their young instead of hatching eggs. So, yeah, more of this, like, changing into mammals kind of idea. Yep. And they see more of Sacker's factories. And then there are leopards pointing artillery at them. Or maybe not maybe they don't. I guess they don't actually see Ben and Kamandi, because Ben and Kamandi managed to sneak in behind one of the artillery guns, and Ben breaks it. But then is attacked by a bunch of leopards. Yeah,
and we passed over the name dropping of Rudyard Kipling, but that's exactly what this is all about. This is all about, like, war between empire and corporations, and in this case, Sacker is looking to just blow up the soldiers with this artillery bombardment.
Okay, and, where is the Kipling reference?
Oh, it's on just before this section begins. Leopards had orders to kill, bulldogs with the courage to die. Only the pen of Rudyard Kipling is missing as the drums begin to roll in on Murder Alley. And that's your Kipling.
Chapter 3. Okay, page 12. So they shoot something at Ben that knocks him out, and Kamandi says he can't leave him there. He's got to do something. But then there's a sound, and yeah, it's like war's breaking out here. The animal troops are blasting the leopards and charging in on the horses. But the Sackers people have better weapons, and they're blowing up the bulldogs with their artillery. So Kamandi grabs a gun and starts shooting at the leopards, and I thought this was interesting that he acts like a wild animal, just making sounds like yar and ruff, so to make them think that he's out of control, and he could accidentally shoot anybody with the gun in his hand. And so they're afraid that he's going to shoot the gun at the ammunition and blow it up. So the leopards scatter, and then the bulldog troops are chasing them.
Yeah, he's using his smarts there. Like, yeah, he can't kill them all, but what he can do is he can frighten them with this, performance, which he does, and he's successful.
Yeah. So, yeah, and Ben is okay. So they've chased away the Sackers people for now. And that's where it ends. And then the next issue box is saying, on the day of the great disaster, what happened to a certain mild-mannered reporter? So, yeah, the next issue is the most DC Universe affiliated issue of Kirby's run of Kamandi.
Yes, we'll have to explore that next time. But yeah, this really, things perked up for me here.
Yeah, once we got past the occult stuff into something that Kirby was more interested in. Yeah, exactly. It did pick up.
Okay. So I guess it would be appropriate if our podcast just kind of ended here and say, well, we'll be back next time. It's not a big finish. It just kind of ends. So
It's just done. It's just done. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Finish. Stop.
Kamandi by Jack Kirby is published by DC. It's DCP in Touch, where we hear from our listeners. A couple of comments on last week's episode via our Facebook group. James Wary wrote, "Thank you for helping me relive my childhood. Comic books were a lot of that." And Rob Walton said, "Another great run with Kirby, once again defying expectations with the killer, whale, ending." Thanks, guys. Everyone else, if you're on Facebook, join our group. There's a lot more listener participation there than there is on our Facebook page. If you're not on Facebook, you have plenty of other ways to contact us. We have a YouTube channel where our episodes are automatically published as videos by our podcast host, and you can leave comments on each video there, or on our blog at deconstructingcomics.com, via Twitter at deconcomics, and of course at our email address, mail@deconstructingcomics.com. You can help the Deconstructing Comics family of podcasts by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. Next week, Critiquing Comics, where we discuss comics made and submitted by our listeners. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.